Hello, YouTube. I'm Vince White. I'm an employment attorney, and I don't know fuck all about employment. Well, no, I do know about employment law. I don't know about criminal law. So we have Michael Lambert, who represented the famous or infamous, depending on who you are, El Chapo, and many other people that I cannot name. He is an expert in his field and one of the most prominent criminal attorneys in New York. We've been friends many moons, probably going all the way back to law school. And Michael, I wanted you on the channel because New York right now is facing a bit of a doom loop. And just to give viewers who aren't familiar with this, the idea, everybody left the offices in New York. Not everybody left New York. Only like 500,000 people actually left New York. But nobody's going to the offices anymore. And so a lot of the leases are being broken. And it's leaving landlords in really tough situations, because what landlords do in New York is they'll take lending against their building and pay the lending with leases. But functionally, that landlord could be insolvent if that loan gets called due. And what I'm dealing with as an employment attorney is a bunch of people calling me up saying, hey, I'm not saying my employer is asking me to lie on financial documents, but just, hypothetically, if they were, how bad would that be? And of course, I know enough to say, yeah, don't do that. That's a real bad idea. But sometimes they say, oh, yeah, I would never do that. I would never do that. But if I did, just like keep my job, because I like my job and it pays amazing, what might happen? And I don't know enough about that to answer. So I brought Michael on the channel. Michael, can you take it away?
I will. I think we should start with, before we get into consequences, some of the pitfalls that occur here because of the employer-employee relationship. Now, your employer might act like, hey, look, man, this is in the best interest of our business. You're helping me stay in business, which helps give you the job. You need to work with me, and we got to fudge these records. Never ever think that your employer is your ally. That's the person that will throw you under the bus immediately when the cops come. Whenever there's money missing, oftentimes because of sloppy accounting, it can take months, sometimes years, for people to notice that fraud has happened, but the statute of limitations is substantial. You're talking about a decade for people to figure out whether the fraud occurred. And actually, that time period tolls, which means it resets every day that the fraud is continued. So you can have an ongoing fraud for 15 years, and if you've committed that fraud every single day, there's no statute of limitations issue. They can go all the way back as far as they want. And the first person that's going to throw you under the bus is going to be your employer. If they have you sign documents that you write off and you say, I'm signing this, these are accurate to my knowledge, you're saying to your knowledge that you reviewed these documents and you submitted these to a bank or some other institution, you're going to be the one responsible. Depending on how sloppy the employer was, he might have covered his tracks and can just wash his hands of the whole thing and say, hey, I don't know, this is a rogue employee. This guy got the wrong idea. I didn't want to commit any fraud. He was giving me these numbers. I am a poor victim here. I didn't know that my own business was so deeply in debt. I had no idea. I'm relying on you as my accountant or my employee to tell me these things, and you didn't do so. So do not trust your employer when it comes to that. It might seem like it's a good alliance to help keep you in business and keep you in a job, but it will backfire at some point. And like I said, it may take a year, it may take a couple of years, but it will happen eventually. People always notice when money goes missing.
Quick note on that. I've noticed over the course of my career, you can really identify a scapegoat in a company. They earn about 40% more than the rest of their title. Almost always there's something about, and obviously these employers aren't planning this. It's just like something in human nature that says, yeah, 30-40% ought to get this person to just do what I need them to do. And you could almost always be like 40% more than the other VPs. So what you do, and right. It's very common, always. Go ahead. Sorry.
As for actual consequences, you're talking about being charged under 2 or 3 different statutes, that all of which are felonies. Criminal possession of a forged instrument, grand larceny, and embezzlement. All of those scale in their severity based on how much money is missing. So you start out with grand larceny in the 4th degree, which is basically you stole $1,000. As the amount of money increases, the degree of severity of the felony increases as well. Now, typically for like first offenses, if you get busted stealing, like, let's just say $50,000, $100,000, nobody's really trying to throw you in jail. but you will wind up with a felony conviction. You will definitely be offered, say, hey, man, we busted you. You can plead guilty to this felony and we'll give you probation, but you're going to wind up with a felony record. The only way you can avoid that is if you can pay back all that money up front. And if you're working for some company, you're talking about tens, hundreds, thousands of dollars, you're not going to be able to personally pay that back. So you are going to wind up stuck with a felony record for the rest of your natural life. Not something that you want to be really dealing with. And again, that restitution issue is a huge problem. You're going to get stuck with a judgment against you personally. You are going to have to help pay back this money. And you could be talking about some extremely large amounts that will stick with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It's one of those things I always imagine, I guess it's too old to make Tiger King jokes, but there's that meme of him being like, I'll never financially recover from this. That's basically what it is. Even if you somehow don't go to jail, you're never going to bounce back.
I have not yet had a client go to jail for fraud, but I have had plenty of them that are still on probation to this day for what they did. And that's the best I could do for them, is to make sure that they don't wind up in a cell. But if the case is provable, and by the way, forensics and accounting forensics along those lines have gotten vastly more sophisticated. There is always an electronic paper trail now that they can go back in detail. I don't know what you think you're hiding, but you're not. And like I said, it can come back to haunt you 5 years, 10 years. It's going to come back for you, and you're going to wind up in court. And the outcome is usually not good, because the paper trails are pretty much, they're very solid cases when they bring them.
Yeah, we deal with a lot of forensic IT. Nothing's ever deleted. And any edits, there's a change log. Like, it's never, once it's on a computer, it's never going away.
I was about to say, when you think you edited something, people think that they're slick, but you go back into the metadata and you can always see what's been altered. You're not slick, and the government knows all the tricks. So don't think you're smarter than they are. And also and again, they might not come for you today or tomorrow, and you might be thinking in the back of your head that I'm getting away with this. That's pretty much what every drug dealer thinks too, until he eventually winds up getting busted. Name one drug dealer that has never been arrested. The answer is that doesn't exist. You have your game for a while, and then the cops come for you at some point. Same thing here with financial fraud. It's all on electronic records. They will get you eventually.
Man, I feel like we have a friend. Never mind.
Poor guy.
So I'll tell you how good forensic IT is. We used to spend easy 10, 20, 25 grand on forensic IT for our cases. They're so good now. They're like, hey, yeah, why don't you keep the money? Can I have a piece of the case? That's how good they are. They're like, yeah, we're gonna mess these people up. Like, don't, just give us a piece, give us a percentage. And I hate that, because it's not coming out of my client's side, it's coming out of my side, right? Yeah. And I'm like, no, let's just pay you. And they're like, no, want a percentage of what you win. You can't really do that. It's this tension in the field. Anyways, Mike, go ahead.
No, I mean, that's pretty much it. But again, just also beware of your boss. Your boss is not your ally. Your coworker is not your allies. When the cops finally come, everybody's going to be trying to throw everyone else under the bus. It's the classic prisoner's dilemma. You are not safe committing these frauds in the structure of your company. Do not expect people to have your back when the cops finally come. They will point the finger at you. The electronic records will be there, and you will wind up in a world of hurt. And I will gladly take your money, but you'd probably rather not have to hire me. I'm the kind of lawyer you'd want to know, but you don't really want to ever have to call.
Yeah, can confirm. You do not want to give Michael your money. It is expensive. Now let's just say it. Obviously, nobody who calls me would ever do this, but let's just say you did it, and nothing bad has happened yet, but you know what you did, and you know something bad could happen in the future. How do you address that today? What do you do?
First thing is to call an attorney, because, for example, if you were to hire me on something like that, I could get in touch with the DA's office and speak to them. Whereas everything I say about my client, I wouldn't even have to use your name, protects you. So I can lay out the case. Hey, I have somebody that's very concerned about some financial fraud that's going on in their office. They were desperate for money. They got hooked into this by their boss. They're willing to help you guys. They're willing to testify. Basically set everything up in advance. Do not think you're smart enough to go directly to the DA or to the police and throw yourself at their mercy. They will say, thank you for the information, slap the cuffs on you, and you just shot your entire case in the foot. You do it through a lawyer so that it protects your identity until the time is right and the deal is already cut for you in advance, that's how you do it. You don't handle it yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, in New York, you even have to be careful about which group, which office, which DA's office you're speaking with, because different ones are, in my experience, and I don't have your depth of knowledge here, but they seem to be aligned with different corporate structures almost in the city. Like, I don't know if I would if I had a problem with BlackRock, I probably wouldn't talk to Alvin Bragg. You know what I mean? Like, that wouldn't be a wise decision, in my opinion, my ignorant opinion. Do you have, like, if you're dealing with a well-connected business in Brooklyn, might you look at a DA in another borough?
Well, not unless the criminal action crossed lines into another jurisdiction, the crime would be committed within that jurisdiction. So you would have to be dealing with the Kings County DA's office. But if you suspect, but if you suspect corruption, in other words, the person that you're going to be basically, pointing out is somebody who is extremely well connected in that particular county, and you have concerns about that district attorney's office, and that's when you go to the feds. Because boy, do the feds love hanging high public officials or state officials and holding them in line. Their Public Integrity Bureau is one of the most vicious prosecuting agencies in the United States, and they love to get their scalps and will gladly go after the more rich and powerful people that you might not want to deal with directly with the DA's office. But again, you do not walk into the feds by yourself, certainly not. You let me do that. We work out the deal in advance, and they will drop the hammer on that person and spare you. So that's how it's done.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I can confirm that as well. As somebody who has been involved in the very unfortunate forced retirement of a judge, those feds move fast. It's something that I've never seen before, frankly.
The federal government has perhaps almost in relative terms, almost unlimited resources compared to their state proxies. Like, there's no district attorney's office, there's no local court judge, there's no judge at the state level, there's no corporation that has the powers that the federal government has. So if you need to go big, then you go big, because if you have those guys on your team, then you're set to win.
It is fascinating. They have the highest budget, endless deep pockets, and just the worst suits. I don't get it.
Too. It's like when you become a Fed, they just give you a generic gray suit, white shirt, red tie, and that's all you're allowed to wear for your entire career. It's unfortunate.
Are allowed to tailor it? Like, I don't understand
why. No, it has to fit poorly too. That's part of it. It has to be a little bit off. Like the sleeves have to the sleeves have to be like a little bit too big, so it can't fit good. And you have to look like somebody handed this down. Some other previous member of the DOJ handed it down to you, like it's a child suit. And that's how you have to look if you're going to be a federal prosecutor. I just want you to know that if you want that as a career, you are going to look terrible in court. Just want you to know that.
You think is it like a badge of virtue? Like, I'm obviously not on the take. Look at my suit. Is that?
I think they almost want to appear like it's almost like their uniform. They don't want to appear too flashy. They are the government.
Oh,
they don't need the suit to speak for them. They are the government.
Fascinating. Okay. Now, in terms of picking a criminal attorney, obviously they should pick you, but if there's somewhere that you don't practice, what do you look for in a criminal attorney if you're dealing with this kind of situation?
It's got to be somebody local. It can get down specifically to the county. So let's use it as an example. Let's say I wasn't practicing in New York and you needed somebody in New York. If it happens in Brooklyn, you need an attorney who has their office in Brooklyn and has connections in Brooklyn. You're going to need somebody that can speak directly to that DA and knows the organizational structure, the investigative structure, and the corporate structure. You can't be hiring somebody who's like, oh, this is my buddy. He's from upstate or out of state, and he does criminal law. He can probably handle this Brooklyn stuff. I mean, how different could it be than where he practices? Local practice matters in criminal defense. It really does.
It does. When my family needs an attorney, I always call up local law enforcement. Call up a statey. Hey, which criminal defense attorney do you hate the most? That's the guy you hire for your family, right? That's the guy, or the woman, right? Does office size matter, right? If you're dealing with a situation, do you want a criminal defense attorney that's got a few minions and associates that if you get a late night problem, you can call and get somebody on call? Or is that a value?
I sort of lean towards somebody who can give you personal attention. My firm in particular stays very small, so that when you hire when you hire me, you hire me. You don't deal with I don't have, you're not dealing with somebody else. When it comes to large, like when you're talking about much larger sums of money, like if you're talking about millions of dollars in forensic accounting, you're going to need somebody who has, you have to ask them, do you have a forensic accountant? And they're going to bill you separately for that, but it's something you're going to need. Now, I employ a forensic accountant as an independent contractor, and you are going to need somebody to go through those books, because the government has people to go through those books. You're going to need somebody to do it too. And that's not something that a lawyer can do when you're talking about thousands of pages of spreadsheets and other financial information. That's just something that we as attorneys don't have the expertise to go to. That's what we hire other people for. So just make sure that that person has somebody on staff or on standby to do that job as well.
I'd probably love to get your forensic accountant added to our vendor list. If you after this, thank you. Any further advice? If this was your family, if this was, you're at the dinner table, you're having a conversation, and somebody comes to you and says, my boss is leaning on me, and maybe I did a couple of things. Anything you'd add?
It's never worth it in the long term. If you got into it and you helped your boss steal some money, just stop it as soon as possible. If you can get out before it gets big, you probably saved yourself, and you might not even need an attorney. But the temptation to keep the scam going because it's good for your job, it's good for your employer, and it's giving you money, you have to resist that. You got to think of it like drug dealing. Just because it's white collar crime doesn't mean that there aren't consequences, and you will get caught. Like same time, I can't stress enough. It's like being a drug dealer. You're going to get caught eventually. You will be making money. You will get caught.